Deceiver? More like deceived her into thinking this would be a good album because it's not. It's pretty poopy, am I right, folks? Am I fucking right, folks? Okay, well, I just deceived you. Real life plot twist. This album fucking slaps. Let's cut the bullshit, folks. Y'all should have known I wasn't ever gonna talk shit about my boys in Chemist, one of the best doom metal bands out there right now. Their second and third studio album, Hunted and Desolation respectively, are what I would call legitimate modern doom metal masterpieces with top-notch songwriting and production and performances. Both of those albums were my favorites of 2016 and 2018 respectively. I had the pleasure of meeting Khemmis in 2017 at the Decibel Beer and Metal Fest in Philadelphia, hung out with Phil Pendergast, had a couple beers, shot the shit. I learned that he is actually a fan of the metal Meltdown, that he actually sometimes watches my shit, so hello to Phil if you are watching this video by chance. And of course, all of this information, coupled with the fact that this is Khemmis' first album signed to Nuclear Blast Records, one of the biggest metal labels out there, obviously means that this is one of my most anticipated albums of 2021. And I am incredibly happy to report that Deceiver lives up to all of my hopes and expectations. While it does arguably fall short of the lightning in a bottle experiences of Hunted and Desolation, which we will address, it is nonetheless one of the most demanding and engaging and emotionally cathartic doom metal records I've heard all year, and perhaps that I've heard in general since, coincidentally, Khemmis' previous studio album. Everything I've loved about Khemmis remains intact on Deceiver: the epic riffs and production, the grand, bold, triumphant, and evocative melodies, the influences from traditional and classic and epic doom and heavy metal. Lead single Living Pyre is perhaps the best example of everything I'm talking about. It is filled to the brim with crunchy, evocative, doomy grooves, soaring vocals, and captivating hooks and melodies, some really scorching fucking guitar work. The solos in particular are bonkers on this thing. I'm also really loving the more melancholic breakdown, then transitioning into a devastating but brief foray into death doom. An influence that I'm happy to report is much more prominent on this record in comparison to the more melodic and hook-based Desolation. There are some pretty powerful Death Doom segments to be found on tracks like Obsidian Crown and Shroud of Leaf. The opening cut of Vernal Gate emphasizes the death in Death Doom especially by contrasting some super catchy classic Doom riffs with the kind of urgency and drive that I would expect from like classic At the Gates or Cataclysm. Ben Hutcherson's guttles are very dry and abrasive. They provide a nice contrast to the soaring and evocative cleans of Phil Pendergast, who is more confident than ever on this album. At this point, I honestly feel comfortable saying that Phil isn't just my favorite doom metal singer, but probably one of my favorite modern metal singers altogether. I mean, this dude just consistently kills every verse, every hook, every single melody thrown his way. There are some changes in regards to the production value of the record. This is noticeably a much louder album in comparison to Hunted and Desolation, to the point of being perhaps a touch overblown in some sections, particularly on more hefty and ambitious cuts like the Astral Road, but it's not an issue that can't be quickly and easily solved by simply turning down the volume just a notch. But the bigger and more important changes lie in the actual songwriting, more specifically in how much more introspective and emotionally transparent and vulnerable and poignant Khemmis are on this album. While Khemmis have always been a very emotive band and as such have always worn their heart on their sleeves, there's a level of honesty and humility and soul on this record that wasn't necessarily this prominent on previous records. In a press release here, Phil Pendergast writes, thematically, all of the songs are about the many ways that we are tricked into believing these stories about ourselves, that we are broken, that we are not good enough, that our genetics determine our fate. The title is the label that we put on our minds as a force that tricks us into believing these stories. The record's lyrical trajectory is similar to Dante's descent into an inferno of his own making. With Ben Hutcherson adding on, anyone who has struggled with mental health or suffered any sort of trauma will tell you that there were times that the mind is its own beast that has to be wrangled. In that sense, we become the deceivers ourselves. We believe we deserve to be the vessel for this pain and this suffering that is being inflicted on us both externally and internally. For me, it can sometimes be a little bit hard to get to the real emotional nitty-gritty of things, considering the more epic and poetic lyricism across the record, but thankfully it's pretty easy to still connect with Khemmis emotionally because their performances are just filled with so much passion and emotional rawness and honesty. Like, I'm really struggling to think of another doom metal band that is putting this much emotional baggage and pain into a record. Yob and Pallbearer come to mind, but as great as those bands are and as great as their records are, it's just not as cathartic for me personally as so much as what Chemist puts out there. Be it through a track like House of Cadmus, which contrasts some very thick and heavy walls of oppressive doom with some very brooding, melancholic vocals, or even through the adventurous progressive heavy metal of the aforementioned Astral Road, which stands out as being perhaps one of the most epic and ambitious cuts the band have ever delivered. Now, a truly cynical and heartless asshole could make the argument that Deceiver, at least by the standards of Chemist, is still somewhat predictable, even despite some of the new flavors and some of the deeper lyrics, and I suppose you're not objectively wrong. There's really nothing on this record that I couldn't kind of see coming from a distance. But I don't know, man, I still thoroughly enjoyed this. Maybe not to the extent that I did enjoy Hunted and Desolation, but to be fair, those records are pretty hard to follow up, and this is about as good as a follow-up could be without going into super pretentious or annoying territory. So honestly, I'm going to give this a 4.5 out of 5. If I walk out of a modern metal record and the worst thing I have to say about it is the sound mix was occasionally a little bit too loud, then it sounds like I had a pretty good time. And again, that's a problem that can be very easily and quickly resolved by simply turning down the fucking volume ever so slightly. Chemists have once again proven to me that they are the best modern doom metal band out there right now. Period. End of fucking discussion. Deceiver is something I will be jamming for many moons to come. I can definitely picture myself attempting to squeeze this into my top 10 at the end of the year, or at the very least making it an honorable mention. There's no doubt in my mind, if you loved Chemist before, you'll probably love this album as well. If for whatever reason you are unfamiliar with them and their particular brand of epic and powerful doom metal, this is a great record to check out. What more honestly needs to be said at this point? 4.5 out of 5. It's an incredible record. Definitely check it out when it drops this coming Friday. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown immediately in case you somehow aren't already. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.